Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing this afternoon? We have about 40 minutes to get through just a very light, nothing topic. No big deal here. Here's what we know. About 6 million Americans are unemployed. About 7 million job openings. So clearly we have a labor shortage and we have a shortage of skills. But this skills gap predates that labor shortage. We know from our reporting on America's Top States for Business at CNBC that states and companies have been talking about this for at least 5 years now. And the very consistent statistic over the years has been that roughly half of employers now say they are having trouble filling skilled positions. So we know that there's a problem, and we have a panel here that is tackling it from a number of different ways. And before we get into how we solve this, I want to start with a little bit of how we got here. And I know each of you has a slightly different take on all of this. Welcome to Byron Augist, Leanne Levensaler, and Rachel Carlson. Let me just kind of throw this out here. What is this skills gap, and how did we get here?
Start?
Yeah. Well, the skills gap is real in the sense that companies are having trouble filling skilled positions. But I think that the real evidence is, as I read it, is that the skills gap is more a symptom than a cause of the problem, meaning that companies actually, and it relates very much to the topic of our panel, companies say, and they mean it, they want people with skills, but they actually recruit, and the first stages of recruitment and hiring are not based on skills. They're based on degrees, they're based on work history, they're based on your history rather than your skills. And that's an extremely important thing because we can all get new skills by learning, but we can't all get a new history, right? And so if you don't assess people's skills coming in, you actually don't know what skills you're missing. So I would say this, nobody knows whether the number of people who have skills but not these degrees is smaller or greater than the number of skilled open jobs. We don't know because it's not assessed. And I think if there's one thing we ought to talk about today as building a skills-based labor market is how is it that we can actually allow everyone to show what they can do so that the jobs can actually find them and those matches. And there's, of course, going to be a lot of education that's still needed. But honestly, if we don't fix the problem of being able to develop skills and for your learning to be able to lead to earning consistently, not just for those with elite degrees, but for everyone, then we're not going to solve the problem. So I think that's the heart of it.
And is the premise here that we don't have a skills-based labor market now? I mean, aren't skills everything, and haven't they always been?
No, in my opinion, you don't have one, no.
Yeah, we could talk about the friction in the market, but I just want to expand on something that Myron said, because, after the recession, when, we had reduction in force and, lots of separations from companies, when the economy started to grow again and we started to hire back, we had gotten to this place where a lot of people were unemployed. So companies could choose to have more stringent, job requirements. And the greatest proxy, because we don't have a true skills-based labor market, the greatest proxy for good would be a university degree, right? And we all know that all jobs do not need 4-year degrees, right? And so I think that exacerbated the problem. So the economy grew, and all of a sudden low unemployment again, but we haven't fully taken away those stringent standards and replaced it with something more called a skills-based labor market. The other reason we don't have a skills-based labor market is because we don't share a common definition or common language of what skills are. We do not have a universal standard of how we express our supply and demand. I know I've said this several times on several different forums here at the conference, but it is really one of the root causes of our challenge.
And thinking about it from a student or employee perspective, I think we see that in its own magnification, but I think it sometimes gets less attention. Yes, we have a real complication that our employers, our universities, our federal government, our local governments can't agree on what the definition of a skill is. Even worse, from Guild's perspective, students don't know what skills they have, right? We have bundled these education programs together such that we've really said you have to make a choice between developing skills and workforce development and getting a higher education, which has this market signal that feels nebulous but we know is important. And we've made especially low and middle income Americans think they have to make a choice between those two. And by creating that false dichotomy, I think it's even more confusing for students to understand what skills do I have first of all? And then what skills do I need to acquire to move into what might be in the gap or in the opportunity market for myself and my family?
Let me go across the panel here and just have each of you tell me what, first of all, a little bit briefly about what your outfit does and how you're addressing these issues.
Right. Opportunity at work is really trying to build the plumbing, sort of almost like a smart grid that allows people without bachelor's degrees to find their way into jobs based on their skills, right? So there's many great initiatives going on, and I think that there are training initiatives, sort of placement, skills definition, and they're not wired together. And I think if you think about what makes a market actually work, it's information, right? And it is the ability to essentially play by a set of rules, and the rules are completely unclear. They're unclear to schools, they're unclear to companies, most of all, they're unclear to individuals. And just to give you an idea of how bad it is, like when you're searching for a job, right? Like say on a search platform like Indeed or any of them. Right now, companies, of course, can screen people out who don't have bachelor's degrees, and they do. But people without bachelor's degrees can't screen out companies that are screening them out. That's literally all the search functionality. This is 100 million people without bachelor's degrees, and even the core job search, like that are very well developed, do not serve them to allow them to not have this Kafkaesque experience of being rejected over and over without actually being assessed. So we're at square one, I think, in terms of a labor market that particularly serves those people, and most of all, that serves the subset of people without degrees that do have the skills, right? A lot of people's barriers are not very visible, but actually people's talents, people's potential, people's contribution is invisible without these degrees, and that is a very bad place to be.
In a previous life, you were a McKinsey consultant. Did you see this coming back when you were consulting with companies and they're looking to fill skilled positions even before we were in this sort of crisis that we're in now? Where are the roots of this getting back?
Yeah, well, I actually, it's funny. First of all, there's a tremendous disconnect when you're working in the private sector, which is all about war for talent. It's kind of like, how do you attract the best talent? And then so I was 20 years at McKinsey, then I was 2 years in the Obama administration, where I oversaw all the sort of the labor market, infrastructure, jobs, all of the innovation kinds of things. And there now you're in a world of like, oh, these sort of poor people, how do we help them? And in fact, I mean, people aren't problems, people are problem solvers. And we've got so many systems in this country, public sector, but very much private sector, right? Redundant infrastructure to stop people from trying and to stop. We need to solve relatively few problems for people, but we need to make it more possible, better information, better support for people to actually solve their own problems. So I think the experience was that we have this idea that professionals are kind of trying to master their careers, and that people that we don't see as professionals are just sitting around like waiting for an answer. That's not true. People are busting their rears all the time, and we need to support them a little better than we're doing.
Leanne, you're helping companies deal with kind of their internal skills gap and realign things. How is that going? Is it as bad as it seems out there from people who are employed, have jobs, but may not have the skills that match what a company wants?
Well, I would just say that I think we've always been in a war on talent. We always will be in a war on talent because in-demand skills will always, by definition, be in demand. And I see this problem as hyper-local, both like geographically local, but also with very specialized skill sets. And the pace of change due to automation and machine learning is accelerating. We all know that. And we're in a dynamics climate around skills too. So it's really hard to signal, frankly, to universities and, all the preparatory education, vocational prep, exactly what we need because it's changing with, such great frequency. That's why we're all sort of over-indexing now on some of the softer side. I think it's a combination of both. I don't think it's a one, either or. But what we see with our customers, we have 2,600 customers that use our cloud-based human capital solution. That includes educational institutions, higher education, as well as employers, corporations. What we see is that there are pockets of skills in regions that they're really hurting around. And I will just make it very personal to Workday. We're in, our headquarters is in the Bay Area. The talent game is on, right? And the hiring for data scientists, hiring for user experience designers, hiring for customer success managers, not a highly technical skill, but super important leverage point for the business. Really tough for all of us. And so, and that way, those are in demand. We feel a gap. That's why the CEOs will get up on stage and say, we're in the skills gap and we don't have what we need. And that's why you have your stat. Half of, I've heard up to 72% say that they're in a skills shortage depending on the survey. So what I would caution is we don't have this sort of macro, every skill category, every job family crisis. What we actually have is very, hyper-local, very focused needs, and that's where our solution should be.
Rachel, how steep is the learning curve as you re-educate, reskill, and upskill workers?
Depends on where the student starts, but I actually think it's less steep than is often told. So there might be somebody who disagrees with the statement I'm about to make here, but you asked us to be controversial, but we're really sick of people telling truck drivers to learn how to code. We're sick of it. Because yes, that should be one amongst a host of options, but you think about the life of a truck driver, why they chose that, their desire to work with their hands. Yes, pounding it out on a keyboard is a little bit like that, but it's pretty different. But when you actually look at the skills gap as it relates to some of the emerging jobs that we need a lot of people who are gonna repair the robots. Right? And nobody's explaining to truck drivers today what it would look like to repair robots. That's actually a lot more like a truck driver's job because one of their core competencies is repairing the truck on their own on the side of a highway when it breaks down in the middle of Kansas. There's a lot of competency overlap there, and so the skills gap for that person is substantially less steep if they're learning how to repair a robot or drone piloting, right? That's a big emerging job versus making it seem like this, hey, you don't even own a tablet or a laptop right now, but your one career path that we'd like to recommend you for after you stop driving the truck is to go learn how to code. So I think if we approach it from a skills mapping perspective and think about what competencies and what skills do our employees have today and how might we both align what they want with careers that move them into the middle class as well as business cases that are rewarding to the companies that today have thousands and thousands of truck drivers and maybe in 10 years from now need a few more folks who can repair a robot, it gets a lot clearer, but I think it starts with the data.
Can I just add, because I think what Rachel just said is extremely important and many parts of it are important. I think obviously, look, everybody can be good at something, but no one's going to be good at everything. So coding or anything else, if you pick just one thing and say that's what you've got to do, that's not going to work for most people by definition. So, which is part of why it's got to be a skills-based labor market, right? Not just like a skills-based training silo, so that the diversity of people's talents can come out. But then if you do this based on skills and you really kind of break it down, the problem is just much simpler. Because let's say you're a truck driver and you say that job goes away. Well, okay, you need to start training for another job. You start from scratch. But if you actually look at the skills, you'll find that there's a lot of skill overlap between that and some other jobs. So there's a number of places you could go that, yes, you need more skills, but you don't need 100% more skills. You need like 12% this way, 18% this way, and it's a different mix, and you can decide if you had that information and if we had that map. And I think that's incredibly important. And if we do that, then I think the credentialing overlay is something that we can handle. But what we're missing is, right, those skills. People's skills are invisible. There was a moment 30 years ago where there was a group of people in all these industrial countries that came to be known as NEETs. It was like an OECD thing. It's sort of not in employment, education, or training. And their barriers became visible, and like lots of policies were made for them. At Opportunity at Work, we believe there's a group that we call STARS. It's skilled through alternative routes. And that their talents, their potential, their actual ability to do the job is not visible today. And in making it visible, and then, as Rachel says, in the overlay and Skills Cloud and all these initiatives to make those specific skills visible and valued, that's when we're going to, I think, really be on our way. So we focus on this group of people, not because they're the only people in the game, but because they're the ones, they're kind of the canary in the coal mine. They're the ones that already, they're the closest to being able to deliver, or maybe they can even deliver today, and they're still being overlooked. And if we can't see them and advance them, then all the people we need to train, it's not going to happen.
And in many ways, we couldn't see them before, right? we couldn't see them before because all of these organizational development exercises, workforce development exercises, were artisanal. They were human-driven, human-powered only, right? And the second you feel like you nailed the solution, the context changed, the conditions changed. But now we have technology, that same technology that's disrupting us right now, that's changing all of our jobs. A third of our jobs by 2020 are going to be reshaped in some way, right? We know that data is out there. But we can take that exact same technology, harness the power of it, to actually create more personalized, relevant experiences to guide people, to make recommendations, to connect the dots for them, for learning opportunities, for apprenticeship opportunities, for mentors, for next move in organizations. We can actually take that same technology and put it to work for us. So this doesn't have to be fully human powered. We can let the machine help us augment the human in a very powerful way.
What should, well, we can get a show of hands. How many in the audience are educators? Yeah. Okay. What should post-secondary education be doing to set students up for this? There was a lot of talk at the outset here about bachelor's degrees, in the sense that it's a little bit arbitrary that that's what we've expected as a credential, but there's way more to it than that. What is post-secondary education, whether it be vocational, whether it be four-year colleges, whatever? What should they be doing? What are they doing right, and what aren't they doing?
I can start. In our position at Guild, we have students who are enrolled in everything from a high school completion program all the way through to master's degrees, with lots of short-term credentials programs as well as associates and bachelors that sit in between. I think the most important thing that all of us who are here at a conference like this today can acknowledge is it's unfair for us to preach something that we ourselves wouldn't practice. So what really irritates us at Guild is when there's a narrative that we ought to force a student to choose between some paths. So I think, for example, if you're going to offer short-term programs, alternative programs, credentials, make sure the student understands they're not slamming the door shut to a degree. Whether or not we agree on whether that degree is the thing they need, ending this game of terminal programs or saying, hey, it's chutes and ladders and you have to pick which way you're going is a really unfair thing to do to low and middle income America, especially for all of us sitting in these seats of privilege today. And so I think that's one place that we really think about. That takes work though, right? So higher ed and all of us, the employers, the skills map, et cetera, need to say, hey, how does this credential, how does this skill, this competency fit into a broader map such that we can help architect a pathway for students to understand, when did I acquire my hard skills, when did I acquire my soft skills, and importantly, for the 100 million folks without a bachelor's degree, most of whom have jobs today, what have I learned on the job? And how am I going to utilize that in my next career? And really mapping those things together is what I think we owe to folks who are trying to figure out how to acquire the next set of skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a slightly different point, but something that we spend a lot of time trying to convene our higher education customers with our employers because we think there's a lot of goodness that comes out of those opportunities. Employers, we hear say, we don't know what the skills are in these industries for the future. We don't know exactly how the job roles are going to be reshaped. We need research, we need more information. It's hard for us to plan when we don't exactly know. And then you turn around, you have the universities in this case that we were most recently convening was university setting. They're saying, well, gosh, our professors, they study this, right? We have fellowships. We spend all our time thinking about what the future is going to look like in these industries. Seems to me we could do a much better job, in addition to technology, much better job of building, some partnerships where we're actually, the signal is coming from the university, right? And then it's going back to the university of actually what we need. So university's telling the company, here's what it might look like. Here's what the job families, the roles, the skills are that you're going to need, and partner with their workforce planners, their talent planners. And then those talent planners can in turn back and say, well, here's our demand, right? Here's what we have. Can you get me the ready supply? So I think that's an interesting opportunity that keeps coming up as we convene, and I'd like to see more action around that. So that's one area.
Yeah. I just want to emphasize that when we at Opportunity at Work talk about the need to sort of open doors and really allow people without bachelor's degrees to show their skills. That's not a knock on college from our perspective. Like there's a tremendous amount of value to colleges. And if you look at the kind of skills we need to develop, while I don't think it's possible to do with just the existing traditional college system, it's also not possible to do without it, right? It's not that like all these sort of new things can just sort of take over. So we need colleges, community colleges, university programs to thrive, to be sort of focused on learning and to be rewarded for that. I think there's a very deep problem in that inadvertently business and employers have almost weaponized higher education in the sense that what should be a bridge to opportunity has become more of a drawbridge. The point is not that people who learn something in college shouldn't be able to take that learning and really do great things. Of course they should. But also the people who've learned things in other ways, who've mastered things in other ways on the job, in the military, wherever, they should be able to do great things too. No one should be capped artificially to be able to, in the level of their contribution. And so I think the universities in particular, I think really sort of face a choice because there's a tremendous amount, the more elite, how do you become an elite university? By doing this wonderful stuff and then excluding as many people as you possibly can from all that wonderful stuff. That's how you get to the top of the rankings, right? So we can decide, is success in higher education about how exclusionary and elite you can be, or is success in higher education about how many people you can educate and send on their way and help? And if you really look at the way much of higher ed is operating, it's really not operating on the latter principle, and it needs to be.
Is there sort of a threshold of skills that people should be coming out of the education system with, whether it's with a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, or whatever? And is there such a thing as being too taught in a particular skill and not adaptable to what the employer needs? What is the happy medium here?
We had Aristotle on stage.
Yeah. I think to answer your first question, yes. We should have the same way we do in K-12, though I would argue it's getting a little fuzzier, but I think we were headed towards some clear movement around standards. I think that standards also make sense at the post-secondary level. I think to your question of overly taught, I think we need to figure out, and I think this is where skills comes back into it, not to hammer home our title today, but I think making sure that we can explain both to the market, but then also to the consumer, i.e. the employee or the student, where they can acquire skills, and that can happen in many places. That can happen on the job, they can happen in alternative programs, that can happen in a university, and creating a currency that can help them express what skills they've acquired. It also comes down to assessment and how do we help demonstrate that the person's acquired those skills. I think those moving parts are where it gets really difficult, but I would say yes, we need to get there.
And if we could establish a common language around expression of skills, then the portfolios that students are creating in their programs would become much greater of a signal, the full portfolio, than just the degree itself, right?
Yeah.
Back to the over-credentialing point. I think that, what employers are looking for are people that are going to, fit not only their culture, but the way that they like to do business and the way that they need to change. So learning agility is, highly prized right now at any level in the organization. And there are certain fundamental things that we look for in just a good employer, a good worker. But beyond that, it's very skill-based. It's very skill-based.
I actually, since Aristotle is not on stage, I want to speak up for, I think, some fundamental skills. I mean, if you say, what skills do you need? Like, look, I think applied logic, and I actually like the idea of coding more as a liberal art in a sense, and in schools, because it's one of many ways you can applied logic and sort of when you like bug fix, right? It's sort of like eliminating the possibilities of like what could be going wrong. So really being able to work through a problem in a systematic way to the end is something that, and there's many ways to learn that, but I think that's important. I think in the world as we live in it, understanding something about probability and statistic and uncertainty, like how do you make decisions under uncertainty? And I personally think that in the math curriculum in high schools, statistics should be far more emphasized. I mean, engineers definitely need calculus, but everybody needs to have like a working understanding of probabilities, because otherwise I mean, what you read about decisions that we're making in the civic sphere and everything, they make no sense, right, statistically, and people aren't equipped to address that. I think there's a kind of a metacognition, sort of an ability to sort of listen to someone and try to break down what they're trying to get across, what might be their barriers. And then I think finally there's ethics, right? We actually, some of the best educated people who can understand how to optimize against a problem don't seem to be very well equipped to decide whether they should optimize against it. Well, yeah, because I mean, you look at some of the biggest disasters have been executed by the best educated people who are best at math and who go to corner solutions that, like, a rudimentary understanding of ethics would have not taken them there. So I think that's important too.
Do you believe that what you just outlined, which I don't disagree with for certain jobs, but you know, we're trying to support creating more middle skills jobs for middle wages, right? Do you believe that those are all necessary for middle skills jobs?
I do.
You do?
I absolutely do, because it's because middle skilled jobs, it's not a term I particularly like. I think the kind of job we're actually talking about, it's the Greeks had techne as a job as opposed to episteme. Episteme is like theoretical knowledge. Techne is craft knowledge. It's knowledge that's acquired through apprenticeship, through repetition, but it actually requires a lot of judgment in those jobs. And I actually think those techne type jobs are what the middle skilled jobs will be in the future, where they're not purely algorithmic. They require judgment. They require interpersonal. So yes, I do think that those are actually to do those jobs effectively in a way that benefits not only your company, but also your community and society. Those are skills that everyone should have.
A way we think about that a bit is what competencies or skills are you asked to take on in your career depending on your path. I often laugh that a lot of my business school classmates went 3 to 5 years before they managed anyone, but the number of Guild students who are between the age of 19 and 22 at Chipotle, Taco Bell, and Walmart who manage teams of 5 to 8 is incredible. But we never talk about that, right? Like, we'll knock on McKinsey for a second, but you can work at McKinsey a lot longer before you manage someone than you can work at Walmart before you manage someone,
Let
right?
me tell you, that's one of the hardest jobs is managing people.
It is, and it's where those skills, the
think
ethics,
those skills are essential for frontline managers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I think we sometimes forget about what our labor market is asking of people. And sure, you might get paid more and you might need fancier credentials to have that individual contributor role at McKinsey, but at McDonald's, you're managing on your 6th successful month on the job.
Yep.
A lot of these types of skills are things that colleges and universities are at least supposed to do well, and it's supposed to train people and educate people on these things in a way that on-the-job training doesn't
I guess
do.
that's why I asked the question about, forgive the term, the middle skills job, but that's exactly why I asked it, because if we don't expect those jobs to require a 4-year degree, I would submit that yes, they do teach that. You know, most universities do for 4-year degrees. Where do we teach, where in our society, where do we teach those beautiful skills that you outlined that are essential for the future?
Well, I think plumbers learn applied logic and sort of bug fix like just as well as coders do. So I think we've got a kind of a narrative that sort of associates these kind of general purpose skills, things that we associate with virtue, as being resident somewhere higher up the chain, but I actually totally disagree with that. I think you're far more likely to learn those skills in the armed forces or in a kitchen than you are at universities, and I think that's a sad statement for universities, because I do think they should. I mean, it's uneven, right? I mean, it's uneven, and it's a very complicated set of things. I personally think most of the skills that really allow you to be effective as just a basic sort of contributor in whatever setting, work, home, community, citizen, really should be taught in high school, right? And I don't think you should have to go to college to sort of master those fundamental skills. But that's not where we are in the country right now.
So we have a number of big corporations in the face of this worker shortage have done away with their bachelor's degree requirements. Are we entirely comfortable with that?
I think many more should do it.
Yeah.
By the way, I think everyone in this room should do it too.
I agree.
I mean, really, I think to require a medical degree to be a surgeon is something I support. right? But to require an engineering degree to design a bridge is also something I support. But to require a bachelor's degree, which is not a thing, it's like 600,000 different things that nobody knows exactly what it means. To require that, I don't understand what job is for that general purpose. Bachelor's degree is a better requirement than either a specific set of skills, or in some cases, a specific degree and set of, which reflects a set of competencies.
Well, I mean, my own personal experience, and granted this is eons ago, I'm a journalist, I got a journalism degree. Working as a journalist, I have often wished that I got a political science degree or a history degree or an economics degree. The skills that were taught, and they were great skills to learn and a great journalism education, but in the end, it was great for my employers, but not so good for me.
Mm-hmm. In my own opinion, and it's an amateur opinion, the heyday of journalism, American investigative journalism, was a time when very few journalists had bachelor's degrees at all, right? When muckraking journalists were like breaking up trusts, were actually exposing child labor and all that, they didn't have bachelor's degrees. What they had is a proximity and a knowledge of the issues, and they had a passion, and they were clear writers, and they could make it. So I don't actually think that journalism should require a journalism degree or even a bachelor's degree, and I think journalism would be better, and I think many trends that we missed in journalism we wouldn't have missed if there had been a more diverse cadre of journalists.
Except that, and to your point, it would have been virtually impossible to get a job without
Well,
the
because our
placement
whole
resources of the
system
journalism
is
school.
set up to look for very specific qualifications called a degree. I mean, look at the way you apply. And look, we're a systems provider. There's standards so we can all communicate with each other about your address field. There's standards about the way you put your job title and the date, but there's no standard for skills. It's astounding to me. I mean, we have to have usability, alignment across all these systems for the most inane things, but yet the most important thing, there is no standardization around. And so I think that we could do a service, all the technology providers, all the entrepreneurs that are here, and the employers in educational institutions that use those solutions, to demand that we start signaling on skill. That would help us, because that's where it starts, to get a job.
And I really agree with that, and companies like Workday, in many respects, have more ability to sort of get that going than government agencies and so forth do. So I think it really is important, these partnerships. Opportunity at Work works with companies like Workday, and I say companies like Workday, there are not that many that really have the sort of large parts of this kind of information layer to really allow that interface to happen, and for it to happen not just, again, at the elite level of top companies, but also relative to like where lots of other people live. And it's one size does not fit all for companies, but you can still have standards where one size does not fit all. So think of the App Store or something, right? I mean, you need to have a certain amount of code that fits a standard, and then you could be as creative as you want to be to meet whatever need. And there's a lot of examples of that, particularly in the tech industry, and how those kinds of markets work. And I think we can learn those lessons and take those sort of marketplace platform sort of operating system type lessons and apply them here to what I would consider really the most important problem, both for our economy and our society.
I think your comment also hit on something really important. You used the past tense, I wished, right? You feel like that door was shut. It was a four-year window, right? Maybe you took a victory lap, you did 5 years, I don't know. You had a 4 year, oh, look at that, okay. The quick and narrow.
I wanted to go to work.
Okay, there you go. You felt like you had a window in time with which you had to accomplish all of your learning, right? And maybe a frat party or two in the mix there. That's how people thought it worked. And so I think the fact that feels like a shut door to you says so much about what's also wrong, because what you should have been able to do is take a few classes and go work in journalism. Learn, figure out, I actually need to be learning about poli-sci and history. Go take an additional set of classes. Everybody talks about lifelong learning, but it's such an obvious piece of what we have to fix here. And it's also a big part of the answer here of how do we help students choose the right path, because right now they feel like if they don't take that 4-year window, they are slamming the door shut. So it helps when employers say you don't have to have a bachelor's degree to apply, but we also need more and more employers saying, but join us and we'll help you learn here. The door is not shut.
So we have 5 minutes left. I want to ask each of you to give this audience a takeaway. What do they do when they leave here to try and close the skills gap and solve these issues?
Well, I think the most important thing that we could do is to build local coalitions, right, with the whole ecosystem and try to say, you know, what problem are we getting after? What gap do we actually need to close? You know, what are the systemic barriers that we put in place? Where's the friction in the labor market? Because we have like sort of micro labor markets. Where is that friction point? And let's solve that. Let's unlock that, which will give us the right to unlock greater problems, and then we'll be a beacon for other communities to do the same thing. So I think it's well within our reach, each individual here, given your perch where you sit, to go and do that in a very localized way to create a huge ripple effect. So I would encourage you to do that, and we'll take the same challenge on ourselves. We try to do that as well.
I think for us, the main thing we hope everyone in this community can do is help more of our students, this 100 million that don't yet have a bachelor's degree, the 64 million of them who will need to learn something new before they retire, right? These are massive numbers. It's more than a fifth of America's working population. Help them understand the path to learning isn't a 4-year block of time and then the door is shut. The path to learning doesn't involve a choice where you might regret that you chose the skill-based program or the degree-seeking entity. Explaining the fluidity and ensuring that higher ed and employers reinforce that, rather than it's easy to tweet about right now, like go do this, skip college, go learn how to code, or do this, or quit your trucking job and do this. Being actually articulate about the diversity of pathways for Americans who have the least college knowledge today and don't have mom and dad helping them through, or worse, paying for them to figure out their path.
One thing for your organization, one thing for people on the outside looking in, and one thing for yourself. For your organization, do really go back and see what non-skills-based requirements there are for your job postings, and really push and ask, why is that necessary? And if you don't get like a really good answer that you can understand and that your aunt can understand, it's probably not right. And you should advocate to change it, because then, right, that is definitely part of the problem. The standards, it's not giving up standards, it's making those standards relevant and clear and something people can actually work towards, right, rather than backwards looking. Then for yourself, I think it would be good for people to listen much more to people around them that are in jobs that you consider low skill or that society considers low skill. I find that there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and understanding and wisdom and insight because of the vantage point, right? People understand systems, often the systems you're working in better than you do. And I think that relates to the last thing, which is because this labor market is not mainly skills-based, and because many of its mechanisms don't work that well, what really does work is actually social capital and relationships. And the problem with that is that we are such a sort of a segmented sort of society by class and race and other factors, region. And so whenever you have the opportunity to actually become proximate and understand and try to pull someone in who is not like you, I think that is a very important thing for everyone to do. So that would be my takeaway.
And, one of the fascinating things of all of this, as this really becomes enmeshed in all the consciousness, whether it's economic development, whether it's states, businesses, companies, educators, is that there are real consequences to all this, real free market consequences. We know, as I said at the outset, that this is the battleground among the states. Who's going to have the best workforce? And it certainly is what's going to decide who succeeds. And the fact that we're now thinking broader and outside the box, and that we've had this chance to talk about it here is at least a great start. So I want to thank the panel very much. Thank all of you for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the conference.